Hi everyone, my name is Grace from Gardening for Joy, and this is the second in a series of videos that I'm doing on pressing summer flowers. And today I thought I would talk about some flowers that I personally find a little bit more difficult to press. Um, and I'll just talk to you about, why they're difficult and maybe some of the things to look out for. So let's go ahead and get started. So I just have my flower press set up in front of me. I use a absorbent paper. This did not come with the flower press. The flower press just came with this kind of plain white paper, very similar to printer paper, but I use a more absorbent type of paper. I found it's just better if I'm going to press. But, the techniques that I show you today are good for whether you use a microwave press or whether you use a traditional flower press. If you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know that I'm a big fan of the microwave flower press. But anyway, so let's get started. Some flowers that I find to be a little bit more difficult to press include zinnias, marigolds, black-eyed Susan, coneflowers. Yeah, those are some of them. So let me start with the zinnias. So let's look at these two zinnias, right? You can see one really, this one just bloomed and it has kind of a single layer of petals. This one bloomed a little bit longer and it developed, multiple sets of petals. So the one with multiple sets of petals is probably going to be a little bit more difficult than the one with a single set of petals. So sometimes with the zinnias, what I do is, I go out to my yard, I look at the zinnias, and I really try to get them when they just first open up. And you can see the yellow insides, and when those yellow insides are still there, that means they're pretty fresh. So generally, when I press zinnias, I don't include the stems, but what I do is I just lay them upside down on the paper and I cut them as close to the back as possible. So besides the fact, of the fluffy flowers, in addition, zinnias, which is going to be the case with most flowers that are difficult, have a rather thick back to them, right? And so that just makes them a little bit more difficult. They retain a little bit more moisture, takes a little bit longer, just a little bit more difficult. But, what I think is important is that you just experiment and try it and try to figure out what works for you. So I have a little bug that's kind of fallen here. I'll just scrape it away and a few little seeds. Okay, so let me just go ahead, put the rest of my zinnias down here. Again, I just clip as close to the base of the flower as I can. Okay, and then I arrange them, right? So you don't want them touching each other. You just want them flat. But again, they're a little bit more difficult because they're a little bit thicker. That back of them is rather thick. Now let's contrast that with a rudbeckia or a black-eyed Susan. Black-eyed Susan has a very thick part in the front, in the center of the stem, and so that makes it a little bit more difficult. But I do the black-eyed Susans very similar. I cut the stem off, lay it flat, and again, these are just more difficult simply because they have this very thick center piece to them. And so it's just going to make them a little bit harder to press. Maybe it's going to take a little bit longer. If you do it in the microwave, you're just going to have to be a little bit patient with them. Maybe start out on not too many seconds, right? So we'll just lay them down. Again, what you want to do with all these flowers is you want to make sure your petals are laying flat. I always place them upside down. We have one more here, so let's go ahead and put that on here too. May as well fill up the press, right? Okay, and those are marigolds. Okay, so there we have it. Put my other piece, and you'll see that, they're definitely a little thicker. It's definitely going to take a little bit longer to press those. So let's cover that with another piece of paper. Another piece of cardboard. Okay, we'll get started. So the next flower I wanted to talk about is the marigold. Oh gosh, marigolds are, again, so pretty, right? So very pretty, many different kinds of marigolds. The issue with the marigold is they have this very, very big back stem to them, right? So they can be, to me, they've been one of the most difficult flowers to press of all the flowers that I've used. I used to try to press them flat on, putting the flower, but the back of that stem is just so thick that that's hard to do. So, what I do today is I really kind of press them together almost to form a little half moon, right? And I lay them down like that. Whether I can leave the stem on, take it off, but I generally try to do that. So again, I just take them, press them together in more of a half moon type of a mode, lay them down. Doesn't mean you can't try to press them flat, because they're such pretty flowers. But I've generally found, at least for me, this tends to work the best because of that thick stem. When you microwave marigolds, you have to be especially careful, because if you microwave them too long or on too high of a heat setting, this thick stem back here, which is really where all the seeds are, can actually catch on fire. So you have to be careful with the marigold. Take another one here. Yeah, they're so pretty, right? And so it is a shame that you have to cover up the prettiness of them. But this is what I found works best. Again, kind of fold them in half, create that little half moon, lay them as flat as I can. And I'll just do my last one here. Again, I just kind of press them together, right? Press that circle together, create that little half moon. There, I lost one little petal, but that's all right. I'll just press it by itself, right? So there I have the marigolds to be pressed. Again, biggest problem with the marigolds is that thick stem. So let me talk about the coneflower or echinacea. So this is similar to when we looked at the black-eyed Susan. It's got a very tough center to it. It's actually very prickly, right? It's a very, very strong, tough center. So with the coneflowers, I go out in the morning and I try to find the ones that have just opened up, because if you've ever seen a coneflower, this cone can become really large. And once it becomes really large, it's almost impossible to press. So try to get them when they first open up, if you have them in your garden, and know that the challenging part is going to be the centerpiece. But what's really interesting is once you do press one of these, this centerpiece really takes on a very pretty, almost a glow to it. So I definitely recommend try pressing these, but just realize that you have to catch them really early when they first bloom. And these, you can keep the stem, you can not keep the stem. And so you can see a lot of my coneflowers are very small because I got them right away when they opened. And, look at how tiny. Usually the coneflowers are much bigger than that. But again, the problem with the coneflower is really that centerpiece. And then I did manage to get one of my purple coneflowers. Okay. So there you have it. Those are what I consider some of the more difficult flowers to press. So we talked about the zinnias, right? And the zinnias have that thicker back piece, which tends to take a lot longer to dry out than other flowers. We have the marigolds, which have that really thick back piece, which is where all the seeds are located. We have the coneflower, which has the very tough centerpiece, right? And you have to catch it when it's really small. And then we have the black-eyed Susan, which is similar to the coneflower, which has that that rather large centerpiece, which can make it a little bit more difficult to press. So with any of those flowers, just takes a little bit of patience, that's all. And those are the tips for what I consider some of the more difficult flowers to press. So good luck with your flower pressing journey. Leave any comments or questions, and I will try to get back to you. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.